Good morning. Funnily enough, I believe that what has been laid on my heart to share with you today is actually similar to something that I've shared sometime last year. I think it was around April. And at that point it was from Deuteronomy 8, around the same kind of theme of remembering the past. But today, I want to invite you to the book of Joshua 4, verses 1 to 24. And my topic is time to look back. Joshua 4, 1 to 24. But my focus is going to be particularly on verses 21 to 24. When all the nation had finished passing over the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, "Take 12 men from the people, from each tribe a man, and command them, saying, 'Take 12 stones from here, out from the midst of the Jordan, from the very place where the priest's feet stood firmly, and bring them over with you, and lay them down in the place where you lodge tonight.' Then Joshua called the 12 men from the people of Israel, whom he had appointed, a man from each tribe. And Joshua said to them, 'Pass on before the ark of the Lord your God into the midst of the Jordan, and take up each of you a stone upon his shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of the people of Israel, that this may be a sign among you. When your children ask in time to come, what do these stones mean to you? Then you shall tell them that the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it passed over the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. So these stones shall be to the people of Israel a memorial forever.' And the people of Israel did just as Joshua commanded, and took up 12 stones out of the midst of the Jordan, according to the number of tribes of the people of Israel, just as the Lord told Joshua. And they carried them over with them to the place where they lodged, and laid them down there. And Joshua set up 12 stones in the midst of the Jordan, in the place where the feet of the priests bearing the ark of the covenant had stood. And there they are to this day. For the priests bearing the ark in the midst of the Jordan, until everything was finished that the Lord commanded Joshua to tell the people, according to all that Moses had commanded Joshua. The people passed over in haste. And when all the people had finished passing over, the ark of the Lord and the priests passed over before the people. The sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh passed over, armed before the people of Israel, as Moses had told them. About 40,000 ready for war passed over before the Lord for battle to the plains of Jericho. On that day the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they stood in awe of him, just as they stood in awe of Moses all the days of his life. And the Lord said to Joshua, "Command the priests bearing the ark of the testimony to come up out of the Jordan." So Joshua commanded the priests, "Come up out of the Jordan." And when the priests bearing the ark of the covenant of the Lord came up from the midst of the Jordan, and the soles of the priests' feet were lifted up on dry ground, the waters of the Jordan returned to their place and overflowed all its banks as before. The people came up out of the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month, and they encamped at Gilgal on the east border of Jericho. And those 12 stones which they took out of the Jordan, Joshua set up at Gilgal. And he said to the people of Israel, "When your children ask their fathers in time to come, 'What do these stones mean?' then you shall let your children know, Israel passed over this Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the waters of the Jordan for you until you passed over, as the Lord your God did to the Red Sea, which he dried up for us until we passed over, so that all the peoples of the earth may know that the hand of the Lord is mighty, that you may fear the Lord your God forever." My topic is time to look back. Now, I'm known in my family as the person with the photos, the person with all the photos. I take my camera to most family events, special occasions, parties, christenings, or just if we just have a little small gathering or meet up together. capture special moments, just capture faces of who's around. I guess I tend to try and catch it all. And I've heard it said many a time about this generation in general that, they don't know how to live in the moment. They have to document everything on a mobile device. What they're doing, what they're eating, nowadays. People go out to a restaurant, before they even touch the plate, strategically twist it in a nice position, take a nice little photo, post it on social media. Why do they have to do that? Why can they not just enjoy the food, enjoy the company? And I guess sometimes even Snapchat's a big thing now. I can't lie, I use it. It's something that you can post videos and pictures and they last for 24 hours and people can watch them. It tends to be, like I said, food, or you're about to go out and do something, or something's happened in the day and you post that. They don't know how to live in the moment. Everything has to be documented. And although I understand where people are coming from with that statement, I'm also a firm believer that a bit of both doesn't hurt. For me, photographs, as I said, being the one with the pictures, to me are beautiful, tangible invitations to reflect. Yesterday, I had a bit of a brief reflection with my parents based on a picture that I saw of my nan, Mum's mum, and myself and one of my younger cousins when we were small, so I was literally about this high. And in the picture, literally just looking at that photograph, so many thoughts came back. For some who may know or may not, my nan has dementia, and we know that dementia is, it's marked with an impact on the mind, tends to have memory loss, the degenerative effects that it has on your memory, on your personality, gives you almost a dampened ability to reason. So for me, that single photo just turned back time, and it allowed me to reflect on all the things that I used to do with my nan, the things that I remember she used to wear, and where we used to go together, all from a photo. And I may not remember everything exactly from that age or that date, but for me, that photo was my time to look back. So why do I take pictures? I take them to look back, and sometimes, like I said, I look back with others. So for me yesterday, I was able to look back with my parents and just reflect on, time gone by and childhood memories, fond childhood memories. Well, my question to you this morning is, do you intentionally look back at your history with God? Do you look back at your history with God? Now, there are 3 areas of this scripture that I'd like to look at. Who exactly should remember? What should be remembered? And why should we remember it? So the first, who exactly are we calling to remembrance? In the latter clause of verse 7, although I am focusing on 21 to 24, the latter clause of verse 7 shows us that those who know him are the ones who are called to remembrance. It says, these stones shall be to the people of Israel a memorial forever. Now we know that the Israelites were God's chosen people. They knew him because he was their God. But nevertheless, he wanted them to build a memorial to trigger their memory. The stones were strategically placed to remind them of the past. Now, for us, knowing God doesn't make remembrance automatic. What memorial will you build to trigger your memory? It may be an ornament that you have somewhere in your home, in your car, maybe even post-it notes that you stick up in prominent places in your home, in your bedroom. It may mean keeping a journal, something that you flick back through. Or it may be even a piece of jewelry, like something like I've got on. I took this from Mom. And I wear it all the time. And for me, this necklace to me, which for those who can't see, it has the crucifix on there. This is my memorial of God's presence. So every day when I go to work, this is underneath my uniform. And although I know God's there, it's a tangible reminder that God is with me. So whatever it is, we need to be intentional. We as God's people, we as God's children, need to be intentional about remembering. So those who know him are being called to remembrance, but also those who may not yet know him, that we see in verses 21 to 22. And he said to the people of Israel, when your children ask their fathers in time to come, what do these stones mean? Then you shall let your children know. Israel passed over the Jordan on dry ground. From a single seed, something great can grow. When your children ask in time to come, then you shall let them know. We ought to make God known to people who may not know him now. For them, the experience that they had, their children may not know. So it was something to share with them. You can introduce God to those who don't know him through sharing what you know of him, through sharing your experiences. And we have a duty as believers to bear witness. Remembering what they've been told may be the seed that God uses to draw them to him. So who's being called to remember? Those who know him and those who may not yet know him. But what exactly should be remembered? And the whole all of the verses actually make that clear. But in particular, verse 23 is your synopsis, your summary. The works of his hand should be remembered. For the Lord your God dried up the waters of the Jordan for you until you passed over, as the Lord your God did to the Red Sea, which he dried up for us until we passed over. Remember when God dried up the Jordan, and remember when he dried up the Red Sea. I'm sure we all here have at least one, I'm sure more than one, but at least one person in our lives who we love dearly. At least one, maybe a parent, maybe a spouse, a child, another family member, best friend. You know, thinking of my auntie, her pet. She loves her cat. Someone or something you love dearly, and we sometimes show how affectionate we are, how much we love them, and how invested in them we are through grand gestures. Maybe an elaborate party, from milestone birthday, a memorable trip, gifts of significant value. These are grand gestures, and you can kind of understand if a small thing is forgotten. You may have forgotten when I bought you that sweet that you liked from the shop. But a party, a 21st or a 50th or a 30th birthday party, or, a trip to somewhere that you'd love to have gone for ages, those grand gestures, how would you feel if that person forgot that thing compared to maybe forgetting when you bought them a sweet? In light of something new, how would you feel if that person forgot that grand gesture? Now, the people of Israel, they bore witness to great miracles at the hand of God, great displays of his love for them, great displays of his power and his presence. He had already parted the Red Sea for them to escape Egypt and Pharaoh. But more recently, he had dried up the Jordan. God wanted them not only to remember the most recent thing, which was drying up the Jordan, but remember what I did back in Egypt. Remember that grand gesture there. Remember when I parted the Red Sea. God may have done a miraculous work in your life, in my life, this month, but don't forget what he did last month. Don't forget what he did last year. Don't forget what he did when you were a child. Remember the hand of God in your life and situations concerning you. We're to remember the hand of God. But why? Why should we remember? And this is where verses 21 and 24 just lay it all out for us. First, we see in the first two verses that we should remember so we're able to tell generations to come. As I read previously, when your children ask in times to come, then you will let them know what happened. Now, I'll let you in on something that you may not already know. My parents are storytellers. They are storytellers, especially my dad. Definitely storytellers. They're very proud of their backgrounds, very proud of where they're from. And some of the things that they've told me, I may not actually experience that firsthand, but as their child and someone who they care about, that thing or those things of great importance to them, they want to share with me. Now, the people of Israel, they had a background, a history that was unknown to their children, something that they may not experience firsthand, maybe because they were too young to be aware or to understand what was going on, if they were there. Maybe they just weren't present to witness it, or maybe they weren't even born at the time that it happened. But those great moments, those significant times in history weren't to be forgotten. Now, my question to you is, do you take pride in your history? Do you take pride in your history with God, your background, the things that have happened, your experiences with Him? And do you share this? Do you share it with your children? Do you share it with your grandchildren, your nieces, your nephews, your neighbors? Anyone that comes after you, do you share that? Or have your experiences with God stayed with you? We need to look back in order to pass it on. So we need to remember so we're able to pass on to generations to come. That's the first reason why we should remember. But the second reason why we need to remember is to make plain His might, to make plain the power of God. In verses 23 to 24, for the Lord your God dried up the waters of the Jordan until He passed over. Make plain the power of God. I did a bit of research, and everyone knows about the Guinness Book of World Records. And it was a bit confusing online trying to sift through it, because it didn't seem to show the greatest in terms of weight. So I was looking at weightlifting records. But I did another general search, and I found out that in 1957, the greatest weight ever lifted by a human being was by a man called Paul Anderson. And he actually lifted 2,840 kilos on a back lift. 2,840 kilos. Now, for those who don't know kilos, it converts into 6,270 pounds. One man, a back lift. The greatest weight ever lifted. Now, put into perspective, my car, I have an Audi A3, and my car actually weighs just under 2/3 of the weight that man lifted alone. Now, if this weightlifting miracle wasn't witnessed, if it wasn't documented, if it wasn't recorded, I'm sure many would doubt it. There's no way that could have happened. Who's that strong that they can lift something heavier than the vehicle I drive? And to this day, Paul Anderson is known as a late great because of that. And even now, men and women in the world of fitness are getting stronger and stronger. But today, I want you to know that God is greater and God is stronger. Yes, Paul Anderson, he's a late great, and he will always be known for that, but God is stronger. What man do you know has the power to part a great sea that's almost 10,000 feet deep, the Red Sea? What man do you know is able to dry up a river that's 156 miles long, the Jordan? God performed these great miracles before the very eyes of the people. His power couldn't be doubted. They saw it for themselves, and it was something that they needed to pass on. So they need to remember, and we should also remember. So we make plain the might of God. We've read what God has done in times gone by, in times of old. But what great work at the hand of God have you borne witness to? God wants you to remember his power. Not only the things that you've read, but the things that you've seen, the things that you've heard. God wants you to remember his power, and not only that, but to be confident that there is nothing he cannot do. So we need to remember to tell generations to come, but we also need to remember so we make it clear that God is almighty, that God is stronger, that God is most powerful. But we see another reason in the second clause of verse 24. We need to remember to incite godly fear, so that all the people of the earth may know that the hand of the Lord is mighty, that you may fear the Lord your God forever. So to incite godly fear. Now we've spoken about this word a few times in like Sundays gone by and other messages, and we don't mean fear as in scared. We don't mean it should be shock, horror, see and run away. It's reverential fear, so a fear that means respect and not wanting to displease. God demonstrated his power before them, and they knew that God would exercise his power on behalf of those who feared him. Now, our knowledge of God and our experiences of him, what we know of him, who we know him to be, how great we know him to be, should be enough to incite reverential fear in us. And just a few to hand: Job 28:28, Psalm 111 verse 10, Proverbs 1 verse 7, and Proverbs 9 verse 10, and Ecclesiastes 12 verse 13, all scriptures that echo that it is wise for us to fear and obey God. To fear God is the beginning of wisdom. It is wise for us to fear God. So we need to remember to incite reverential, godly fear in us. But there was something else that stuck out to me. We need to remember because of the implied danger of forgetting. Now, although it's not explicitly stated, the text seems to imply it. He dried up the sea, he did this, he did that, so that all the people of the earth may know that the hand of the Lord is mighty, that you may fear the Lord forever. These stones shall be a memorial to the people of Israel forever. You should tell your children. You need to remember this. Why would it be echoed, the importance of remembering, if there was not a danger of forgetting? We know that the opposite of remembrance is forgetting. So a call to remembrance, as we know, tends to be to ensure that you don't forget, like a little gentle nudge or reminder. But also when there's a perceived risk of forgetting, and we need to be careful not to forget the deliverance of God in time gone by. Sometimes we can get so caught up in the here and now, what's going on now, that we find ourselves at risk of forgetting what had happened. So we need not forget to look back. So what did we look at again? We looked at who should remember, and we spoke about it being not only those who know God, but those who may not yet know him. What exactly should we remember? We need to remember the works of the hand of God. And why should we remember it? We need to remember so we can share that with generations to come. We need to remember so that it incites reverential fear in us. But we also need to remember it so that we make it clear how powerful, how mighty God is. We as Christians need to remember God and the works of his hands, and we ought to make both known to others, make both known to others, so know God and know his works. So don't just tell people what he's done. Tell them who he is. God desires to be known not only in generations of old, but now and in generations to come. God is mighty and we cannot doubt his power. And in remembering him, who he is, what he's done, we do well to reverentially fear and obey him. And finally, there's a time to look back. There's a time to look back at the wondrous works of the hands of God, and that time is now. May God bless his words.
I'm quite sure that we can extract a lot from what is said this morning. That we need to remember, we all have a history. And, we can look back within our lives from childhood right through, and also from our Christian experience, from the time we came to know Jesus Christ, that we have a history. And just to add one thing to what Roxanne said, one of the reasons why we need to remember, because in order to go forward, we cannot go forward successfully if we do not remember the past. Just to add one thought, when they send the spies up into the land to view the land, and all the 10 spies came back. So look, right through the land, it is infested with giants. We cannot overcome them. Caleb and Joshua said, let's go up and conquer, because God, we can do this. Why he was able to say that? Because of past experience. Because he saw what God did in the past. He said, we can do this. What are your giants this morning? What are some of the things that you might be facing this morning that you might believe, gosh, this is impossible? These are mighty. If you remember the past, then you'll be able to face your future with confidence that God is with me. As Roxanne mentioned this morning, the Red Sea, the Jordan, it said it overflowed its bank. That river was scary, but God dried it up. The Red Sea, it was impossible to pass from a natural point of view, but God parted the Red Sea. And Joshua is saying, remember these things, because they are significant. God has done significant things. And if you remember those things, when you face your battles, you'll be able to go through, because you remember what God did. And if God did it then, he can surely do it now. I want to ask us to stand, and we are going to sing a song. We're going to sing another song, and we are going to pray.